I want to really focus on in 2025, what are the core things that any PBM should be doing on behalf of their employers? Hello, and welcome to the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, a show that cares about healthcare. Each week, we sit down with some of the top industry minds to discuss how this healthcare system works, what solutions actually deliver results for employers, and how do everyday Americans get access to better and cheaper care. So whether this is your first day on the job, or you're a grizzled industry veteran, or if you even randomly stumbled upon this podcast, I promise you that this show is full of information to help you understand this crazy world we call U.S. healthcare. So thanks for tuning in to the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. Let's go make healthcare better together.
Today, back in my day.
Back in my day.
I mean, I laugh because when I started in benefits.
I'm old enough to be saying back in my day, by the way, now, too.
I'm far older than you.
That's okay, but I feel I've got enough street cred. I can say back in my day. Now.
But having $1 million claim was almost unheard of.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't happen, and now it's just like, oh,
well, do you know one of the reasons
baby.
for that?
Yeah.
Do you know the ACA removed the lifetime maximums and annual maximums? Yeah,
right.
I'm sure you knew that, right? But it's like that was one of the triggering events. And so again, in that HCC stop loss report, they show frequency of claims at certain spec levels and group sizes, and there's a clear delineation between pre-ACA and post-ACA.
Is it really? It's
exponential. And so you could make the argument, well, that's because of gene therapy, and that's just because of inflation.
Right, yeah.
Or you could also say it's because lifetime maximums don't exist and annual maximums don't exist. So hospitals understand there is theoretically no limit to what can be charged for a claim.
Well, and I think there's a little bit of the problem is they couldn't charge it before, but they can now. But they didn't need to. I mean, we can get into a whole conversation.
Is it necessary?
We can get into a whole conversation about that.
We're already in the conversation. This is the beauty of this. And if it's good, we keep the stuff before the introduction. But so I'm here with Julie Wasserman, and you are with VerusRx, right?
Correct,
okay.
Yes.
So all right. So I'm going to start by giving you some shine.
Okay.
I was talking to a consultant a couple weeks ago in Arkansas, and I think I shared this with you off the camera, but I'll say it on camera. And I'm not going to tell any of my competitors who are listening who the consultant is. But we were presenting what we do in our pharmacy consortium, and they're like, that's awesome. We only use VerusRx. So every group we're going to bring to you, Verus is going to be a part of the fold, and you need to make sure you underwrite it properly. And right? Okay, cool.
Well, I love
and this was while we were in the interim of booking the podcast. I'm like, okay, cool. It's kind of nice to hear an outside perspective of somebody say they're very good at what they do. So that makes this more fun.
It does make it more fun, and I certainly appreciate that. We are definitely making waves in the market, which I love. We are doing things right. We're doing things well. We have been down market for a long time, and so I think now what we're getting is that credibility to start to go up market, getting more involved with captives, getting more involved with larger groups, getting more involved with what I would say the national brokers.
Yeah.
So but that's a tough nut to crack.
Oh, yeah.
As you can imagine. Everybody's got a national practice for something, so it's getting past those gatekeepers, but we're doing it. So, and I was one of I think I'm the second or third salesperson they hired. So an amazing kind of story, if you will, based on how they started, which I shared with you how they started. It was really just to be the PBM for a TPA. The gentleman started it because he was somewhat fed up with his other options. And so we were just the PBM for that TPA, and then the realization was this PBM can stand on its own.
Yeah.
And so since then, we've grown. So we are still the PBM for that TPA's level funded business, but now we're out there like I'm doing what I'm doing, and I think I might have been the second actual true salesperson. So, but the ride has been great.
Well, I want to comment on that, though, because it seems often the genesis of a great business is, I'm just going to do it. I can't find anything that does it the way I want to do it, so I'm going to do it the way that I envision it should be done. And like you said, it sort of solved the problem internally first for the TPA, and then it's like, no, there's a market for this, and we should go out market. And before we get super meaty into the pharmacy world, though, Julie, I want to hear your background, if you don't mind. Share somewhat of your story, because you've been in the world of consulting. You said you stumbled in insurance like most of us. So give us your 5-10 minute bio of who Julie is.
All right. So dating myself here, about 29 years ago now. I had graduated from college. I spent a year in California thinking, I don't know what. Came back.
Wait, were you pursuing an acting career?
I was not pursuing an acting career. Or singing career, as we've just established. Came back and was waiting tables and literally just did not know what I wanted to do. And I had a friend who Aetna and U.S. Healthcare, if you remember back in the day, and you might not because this might precede
Not
you.
that long ago.
Okay.
I didn't start that long ago. Yeah.
Okay. So Aetna and U.S. Healthcare merged. U.S. Healthcare was a Northeast, primarily HMO carrier who sold direct to companies, direct to businesses.
Okay.
They migrated over into Chicago, and they did this mass hiring of direct reps.
Okay.
And I had a friend who went on an interview, and it was one of those, like, if you know anybody else that might want to interview, and he gave my name, and I was like, why would you give him my name? I don't So I went on the interview. I had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. I kind of laugh about it today because I still talk to the gentleman who hired me, but at the time, my resume was literally like the most ridiculous thing you could ever see.
What was on it?
I waited tables, and I was like our philanthropy chair for my sorority. It was,
Yeah.
But then again, they were hiring they were hiring young people with really no experience. And we laughed because the gentleman I was interviewing with said, he's like, I was kind of ready to throw you out of my office. And he said, here's the next step. Well, if we're interested, we're going to call you, blah, blah, blah. And I got up, I walked out the door, and I turned around. I said, well, are you going to call me? And he said, as soon as you said that, you closed me, and I realized that I wanted to hire you.
That's awesome.
It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then we went through this big training. It was with Aetna, so they did a great training program. And for whatever reason, it's kind of silly when I think about it, I just really took to it. I loved it. I loved the concept of it. I just got really involved. So I was a direct rep, which was a miserable experience. We sat at hotels with calling cards, literally dialing for dollars.
And you were calling employers directly?
I was calling employers.
Okay. Right.
And we were doing the whole walking around and collecting business cards. Who could get the most business cards? It was, looking back on it, it's really funny. But I just really took to it. So within about a year, I was promoted, if you will, to broker rep, which is really the world we live in. You sell everything. You distribute through consultants.
Yes.
So that I became a consulting rep, if you will. So selling Aetna through that distribution channel. From there, I went over to Great West, which is now Cigna, but I guess it's almost what you would call a level funding-ish product. And then from there, I made the jump over to being a consultant.
Well, and so did you take pretty naturally to sales? It sounds like you did, but did you know that that's kind of what you wanted to do or could do?
Not until I got there.
Yeah.
No, I think that it was the insurance or health benefits industry that I really was intrigued in, but I think I probably I loved the idea of sales. I feel like it's funny because I was very shy as a kid, I think, but when I talked to people who knew me from back then, they were like, I'm not surprised you're in sales. I was like, okay. I appreciated that aspect of earning credibility, being able to, and I hate to say this because it sounds shady but I don't mean it to win people over, but by winning people over with credibility, getting them to trust you with their business or what they're going to do with the second largest expense in their next to payroll.
Yeah.
So being able to go in and be able to explain something and have someone say, this person knows what they're talking about. I think I took to that mostly.
Yep.
And then I flipped over to the consulting side, which is very much the same. You're having to work with these businesses, these business owners, and trying to help them manage a huge expense and trust you with it and trust that you know what you're doing. So I think that's probably what I took to most. But then this industry is incredible. It's been the longest, craziest ride from what I was selling back then to what we're doing today.
Yeah. Well, did you intentionally seek out the consulting world, or did an opportunity just arise to join?
An opportunity arose because one of the consultants that I was selling to asked me to come.
Well, that's a very common transition, though. Consultants recognize when there's a good carrier rep or salesperson, and at some point they're going to plant that seed in your mind that, hey, have you considered coming over here, and have you considered the residual nature of the business and those type of things? And if you are good at consulting to them, I think their suggestion is that you can consult to employers as well. Right?
So I think that's exactly what happened. And funny enough, I had actually somebody do that to me at U-Powered.
Oh, really?
This week.
Yeah.
Said, have you ever considered being a consultant? I was like, well, I was.
As a matter of fact, yes.
Would you want to? And I was like, I really love what I'm doing, but thank you.
Yeah. So who were you consulting for at the time when you made that transition?
I went over to, it was privately held at the time, but became Willis.
Okay.
So it was a private consulting firm called Tillman Filippini. They got bought, you know the drill.
Yeah.
So I was working for Willis. It was about 5-ish years. And then
was there an area of specialty for you? What you focused on for business, or was it self-funding? Was it small group, large group?
It was self-funding.
Okay.
And I think that was because I learned self-funding at Great West. So I went from, Aetna really kind of selling fully insured, which was most prevalent because HMOs were like the latest and greatest, and you can't self-fund an HMO, not a true HMO. So fully insured was really the way everybody was going, or they had their, what they called the quality point of service program with QPOS. It was like the biggest thing. But again, fully insured, because it was a capitated product.
Yep.
And then so I went to Great West, and I really had to learn self-insurance. And then with that was probably a good catapult to being a consultant, because now I understood really the inner workings about what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, really, there's so much behind it, stop loss, et cetera. So it was from there that I went over to consulting, and I focused mostly self-funding because I had that background. Also, though, it's really, when you talk about being a broker versus a consultant, when I think about it, so I always try to be respectful and say consultant, because when I think about brokering, it's like, let me get a fully insured bid, let me slap it on a spreadsheet, and like,
here you go. Tell me which one you want to pick, and I'll see you next year. Yeah,
it's transactional.
And we do, and it's not to diminish broker necessarily, but there is a distinction between the two, and I would agree with you there. Yeah. And I think the world that we live in today in 2025 demands, I need a consultant more than anything. If you want a broker, you can get a broker. Yeah. And there are certain size segments of employers that a broker is perfectly fine. The world that we operate in, a consultant is going to be required to really do the things that you want to do in your plan. And that's what I've always envisioned. Is I want to work with consultants, and I even want to consider myself a co-consultant alongside of them as well.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Then did you make a transition from Willis? We just discovered you and I both worked at Hayes Companies as well.
Yeah.
Where I forgot, we didn't even cover where you're from and where you live. Chicago.
I'm in Chicago.
Okay,
I live
cool.
in the city.
In the city.
Someone's going to ask what part. City. I'm a city gal. Born and raised south suburbs / a little bit of city. After my stint in California, I came back to the city and I just stayed there. So I've got 3 kids. We raised them in the city. The big issue, if you will, of living in the city with kids is just dealing with the school system. But we managed to figure that out, paying to go to our private school.
Money,
So stayed there. So I'm down to 1 back at home. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now, and do a little bit of traveling, as we talked about. I'm down in Dallas quite a bit.
Yeah, and we were talking about our mutual admiration for old Mr. Dave Ross, and you give him a little shine. I mention him probably once every couple of months, and I think it's just like, hey, Dave, come on.
It's funny when you...
It's fascinating how good he is at speaking about self-funding in an entertaining way.
And it's funny, when you said the most entertaining, you said his name, I'm like, oh, by far. I mean, I used to say that. I'm like, if there's anybody that can make this business entertaining, it's Dave Ross. And so if I come across anybody who's ever with Hayes or Brown & Brown now, it's like Dave Ross, and it's like, you just
They're
know.
like, oh, they light up.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, you definitely know. And so you enjoyed your time there. When did you decide that maybe the consulting world wasn't going to be the long-term move for you, and when did you join Verus?
So there was some stuff in the middle. I love consulting, but I still get to do it, whether I'm here or wherever else I was, which I can get into. But it's really hard. It's a tough thing to manage when a lot of times all you're getting is the problems. So I was a consultant, but then also managed a book of business. So as opposed to managing a book of business, which most of that I love, because you're strategizing, you're talking about all the different things coming in the market, and what can we do here, and how do we analyze this data there. But you're also getting a lot of, like, nobody calls you to be like, you're doing a great job. There's another problem, and it can be very frustrating. And I think I got a little burnt out. So short story, but I got a little burnt out, and I had this little blip of leaving the business completely to go be a coach at Orange Theory.
An Orange Theory coach. I knew fitness was a big part of your life, but you leaned all in on that for a while.
I leaned all in, and I had a little bit of maybe corporate burnout, and I was like, I'm going to go coach Orange Theory. I love it, which I did. I got my certification. I went, and then I realized that was not something I could do day in and day out. I love doing it, and I do it like when I want to. I can sub. So anyway, it didn't take me long to realize that I actually missed the business. So then I came back into it. So when I came back into it, though, I actually came back into it at a Ben admin vendor, but in a consulting role.
Okay.
So it was sort of this segue over into then Ben admin.
Okay.
So after that,
The world of Ben admin, I don't even think I understand. I mean, you can give me the Cliff Notes version of it, but did you enjoy that space or no?
I did. I enjoyed it in that I thought there would be more, because I have a consulting background, there's always a bit of trying to tie everything you do in this ecosystem back to outcome.
Okay.
Right? Like if you have better communication and there's point solutions ad nauseum. And so Ben admin systems, I would say they migrated from capturing enrollment data to being an educational portal, if you will. So with that, the hope is that your Ben admin system is good enough to be able to get your employees engaged and to be able to understand their point solutions. And like we talked about, if a point solution nobody is engaging in it, it does use
It's
zero.
useless.
It's useless.
Yeah.
So the aspect of a Ben admin playing a part of that role was what I liked about it. And I liked my time in Ben admin, but I will say that it's hard to be super passionate about it.
Fair.
And so,
But in the subject of passion, you did the coaching of Orange Theory, which I'm sure you're passionate about
Love
that.
it. Yep.
But one of the things that I've discovered throughout life is like, when you turn passion into a job, it may not actually equate to like what you wanted out of it, because now it's your job. Now you're doing the thing that you just sort of did when you wanted to under your own volition that you're passionate about. Now it's a job, and it kind of takes some of the allure away from it. I'll give you a corollary. When I don't know if I shared this with you before, but I used to do stand-up comedy and would write jokes.
You did?
Yeah,
No,
here
you
in
did not share
Dallas.
that with me. Okay.
And the reason I bring that up, it's relevant here, is I discovered when I started to learn the science of the art of a joke and how to structure a joke and write a joke, I would go watch comedy and I'd go, oh, that's what he or she's doing there. Like, you break it down, and what it took you away from is the enjoyment of comedy.
Right.
You couldn't just listen and watch and laugh. I'm scientifically breaking down their jokes and they should have said this or this tag or whatever. And it took me out of it. And it took me a long time, believe it or not, to leave that world of doing it before I really could just watch comedy as entertainment anymore. And so that passion element became a pursuit of a job that ended up taking the fun out of it to a degree. Yeah. But anyways, back on track. I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, that's exactly what happened is when it became my job, it wasn't fun anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was just exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
So I love to talk, give me a mic and I'm all in. I said I'm gonna bust into song. And so I love commanding the room, and I love my members, these people are like my community now. But when you had to do it like 5 classes in a row, all of a sudden you just felt like you were just talking.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't helping people. I was just like talking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized like, I love this, but I want to continue to do it, but I can't do this every day. I can't do 25 classes a week. So that's sort of what happened. And I also very much missed the healthcare space.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. I was like, but I missed it. It's to me, it's still fascinating.
Not sure. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in my career. I'm not sure I could leave this space. I'm
so
here.
much.
There's so much to do for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
There's no doubt we won't solve it and all get to high five and say we did it. And then
if only,
healthcare
right?
was fixed and now we can go do something else.
Yeah.
But even I don't know if I would want. I mean, some form or fashion, I'd have to be revolving around healthcare. There's no doubt.
Even if it got fixed, it would evolve.
It would.
I mean, it won't get fixed. Let's face it. But again, from when I started to where it is today, it's incredible. Like you don't even recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
We were peddling HMOs and everybody was buying them.
Mm-hmm.
Now the HMO, I mean, unless you're probably out west, it's
in
almost
California,
a thing of the past.
Yeah.
So it is fascinating. It's constantly changing. I feel like selfishly, it is recession-proof from a standpoint of people are losing their jobs left and right, and I'd be getting phone calls, are you interested in a career change?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't going away. If anything, the state of our healthcare system has made us more valuable. Mm-hmm. The royal us, not just me. So I love doing that. So I did go back, and then Ben admin, to your point, it's great there's a lot that can be said to it, but back to passion, what I found, and this, not just because maybe my employers are going to be watching this, but for real, this is probably the first role I've been in that I am really passionate about what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So we talked about U-Power.
But were you passionate about pharmacy benefit management before joining? Or did you have an interest, or was it like a four-letter word for you almost, where he's like, I know this is the dark arts and I know there's a lot going on here, but I don't even want to bother with it. Like what was your opinion before?
I wasn't passionate about it, but because I didn't know enough about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been a consultant. When I was consulting, and PBM carve-outs were really they weren't a thing. I mean, you might have done it, but for the most part, you were like, let's take a look at their AWP discounts and decide who's got the best,
Mm-hmm.
You were like, well, we're just going to stick with whoever it is,
Yeah.
CVS, Blue Cross, So I didn't dig deep into that world when I was a consultant, and then I'd been out of consulting, if you will, from that aspect for a long time with Ben Admin. So when I was leaving Ben Admin and I was introduced to VerusRx, my first interview, if you will, was a little bit more just, for me, exploratory. I was like, let me see what this is all about.
Yeah.
I was like, is there really anything to differentiate? It's like, I don't want to go sell widgets, or not that it's a widget, but I was like, I don't want to go sell PBM and just talk about, well, we have the best service, because everybody's going to say that. So I didn't know what I was getting into. Once I spoke with the gentleman who hired me, and then my who's now my boss, the sell for me, quite frankly, at that time was culture more than it was. Okay. Part of that is probably because I came from a culture that did not make me very happy. So I realized how important that was.
Yeah.
So the initial sell to come into Verus was the culture, but also where they were at from a standpoint of they were no longer just a startup, but there's still a ton of road ahead.
Okay.
So it was such a huge opportunity, and I was like, you know what? I'm smart enough to figure all this out. Like, I haven't dug into PBM before, but I know enough to be dangerous, and plus I'm smart enough to figure this out. The more I dug into being at Verus, the more I realized, like, it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. And then we were talking about U-Powered. All of a sudden, you start to realize that there's all these other vendors, consultants, all these different areas of what we're doing, of people who are these like-minded people who are really trying to change what's happening.
Well, and so I'll give you a story from U-Powered, and give Emma and Dave Contorno a shine. Amazing event, one of my favorite conferences in the business.
I love it.
But what I found is that everybody there is trying to accomplish the same goals. We have different ways we go about it, and we might have differing opinions of how the solution works, but we all want the same thing. And so I was having a conversation with somebody that works at a competitor, and we were just chatting. Like, my opinion has always been, yes, we're competitors in individual situations, and you might win, we might win. My goal is to win more than you. But, however, I know you want the same thing as I do, and so I have no reason why I wouldn't be kind to you or talk to you. And it was funny, this guy, his counterparts, I guess he was leading a sales team, his counterparts were like, why were you talking to that Spencer guy? Why were you talking to that Pareto dude?
He's our competitor.
What were y'all talking about? And he was like, we were just talking, we were just having a chit chat. And we don't view each other as enemies, because at the end of the day, we're all going to be required to solve a lot of these big problems. And there's so much opportunity in business to go around. My mindset is we can coexist and we can both thrive. But if it makes the industry better, that's the goal that everybody has.
I agree. And I think that's very much what I found out of U-Power that I have not seen in any of the conferences, at least I used to attend. So it was a pleasant surprise to see that everybody there was looking to achieve the same goal. Nobody was there like beating their chest, talking about how great they were over anybody else. Like, I talked to, it was sponsored by a competitor. I mean, my view is if...
Did you go kick over their table when you walked by? Take a couple of their pens and throw them in the trash? I'm just kidding.
Maybe.
No. Maybe.
But they are doing what we're doing. So I would say to any of our competitors that are trying to do the same thing we are doing, which is drive down spend in a different way, that they're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. Do I think we've built a better mousetrap? Well, of course I do. But I would never disparage them, because they're all trying to do the same thing.
Well, and that's what, when we were talking over coffee, that kind of was what the meat of this conversation to be. Because like sometimes folks want to come on and they want to say, these are all our differentiation. This is our product and commercial. And fine, rightfully so. But if we can talk about the things that PBM should be doing. Let's set the standard for what I want out of a PBM. And if it's Verus or somebody else, if they're doing the things that I believe are the right things to do, then it comes down to culture, the person I'm working with, things like that, right?
Chronic health issues, surprise out-of-network medical bills, inflated medical and prescription drug prices. These issues cost self-insured employers hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Add to this the rising cost of care and potential for waste across the life of a claim, and it's clear that self-insured employers need innovative solutions that lower their health plan spend. At Valence, we've done just that, developed innovation that shifts the current paradigm. A complete and integrated ecosystem solution driven by data, one that manages and simplifies the complexity of medical claim costs. It is through analyzing millions of data points that we enable employers to realize and fuel cost-saving solutions. Valence experts come prepared from day one, targeting the fraction of claims that will drive the majority of health plan costs. That is how our team lives the Valence promise, engaging early and often for smarter, better, faster healthcare.
And so, I want to really focus on in 2025, what are the core things that any PBM should be doing on behalf of their employers? That's what I would love to discuss today. And Verus will be, of course, intertwined with that, and you get to lead the conversation.
That's fine. Perfect.
Yeah. So, let's start with some of the basics, right? If you don't mind. We hear about the big bad, big three, right? And they're doing all the wrong things, and they're evil. And I don't know if that's quite all the way true, but though it's popular these days to disparage the big three, and maybe there are some good reasons why we do that. But when you think about big three PBM and some of the practices, what are the things that people are most complaining about of what we don't think are the right things to do?
I'm so well prepared because I had this presentation yesterday.
Good.
One of the biggest is probably, first of all, rebate chasing. I want to scream, please stop chasing rebates, which they do very well. So I'm not disparaging that, but if that's what they do, one thing they do really well is they're going to generate the most rebates. But if you aren't chasing rebates, let's think about all the other things. So there's a few things. One is the vertical integration. So if a PBM is if the insurance carrier is owning their own PBM, we go back to alignment. What are the objectives? Do they align with what your objectives are? And if they're owning their own PBM, it's a revenue stream for them. Now, I also said this yesterday, we are a PBM not owned by a carrier, and of course we have a revenue stream. We're all in here to make some money.
Business.
But how much revenue? What's the right amount of revenue, and how are you earning it? Are you earning it on the backs of, and I'm not saying they aren't, but that's the question, is if you own your own PBM and you don't want to let clients carve it out, why? Because it's a huge revenue stream. How big is it? So, and if you don't know that, and you probably won't ever know that because there isn't, and this word has become a little bit overused, but there isn't transparency. So that becomes the biggest question. So I won't name the name. A large insurance carrier recently came out and said by 2028 they will give 100% of rebates back.
3 years from now.
Okay, so you're like, okay, so what are you doing today?
You're not doing that today, right?
And then you're thinking, well, if you're going to do that, means today you're using those rebates you're keeping for some type of revenue. So if you're going to give them all back, then what are you going to switch up to get revenue somewhere else? It's skeptical, but it's also realistic.
Well, I have 2 points to that. One is, again, we won't name names, but I've seen a very clear slide showing the operating profit that's coming from one of the carrier-owned PBMs over a period of time. And you looked at the proportion that was coming from their insurance side of the equation 10 plus years ago to today, and nearly 50% of their operating margin is coming from their pharmacy side.
Yes.
And that's not by accident, right? No. That's certainly not by accident. The other thing I wanted to ask you, kind of in that, in the spirit of making sure everybody can follow this conversation, why don't we want to maximize rebates? Why is that rebate chasing? Let's define why that's maybe suboptimal for an employer.
Couple things. One is you're waiting on those rebates for 120 days, which isn't a bad thing. But when you chase a rebate, again, your incentives are not aligned to be able to access the right drug for the right reason at the right cost.
Okay.
So typical, my boss says this, but if you are, when you do your taxes, if you have set yourself up for where your taxes, you know you're going to get money back, what does that mean? You've overpaid in the first place. So would you rather pay less in the first place or overpay and wait for money till next May? I mean, so it's sort of like,
We use that pretty regularly as well
insane.
in the world of kind of profit share or dividend
Right.
distributions and captive. It's like, do you want a huge tax refund? Well, no, because ultimately that means you've prepaid the government
Overpaid.
and they're giving you your money back
Yeah.
later, right?
Yep.
So ideally you get it as close to neutral as possible, right? But same thing would exist here. It's like, do you want to overpay for drugs to get portion of the rebates back
Right.
most likely, or do you want to figure out, is there a cheaper way to pay for these
Right
drugs
out
in
of
the
the
first
gate.
place? Out of the gate, absolutely.
yep.
And so rebates are do we make a judgment, are they a bad thing necessarily, or it depends on the incentive structure and why we want to focus on one way to pay for drugs versus maximizing rebates? And the second question is, really it comes down to who's getting the rebates.
Well,
and how
that's
much.
a big piece of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So like in the normal world, especially in fully insured, carriers are keeping the majority, if not all, the rebates. Is that correct, or is it changing now?
I can't speak to it. I
Okay.
would think that that's probably more accurate. Again, I mean, I don't know the inner workings. I haven't seen it, but when you talk about their profit or their revenue coming from that, probably yes.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
And so rebates is similar to if you were going shopping, and even sometimes they might raise the baseline price of a T-shirt, and then they'll give you a discount or a rebate off of it.
Right.
And then it's a little bit of a shell game because they're moving the price of something up to give you a bigger discount off of it.
Right.
And you might actually still pay more for that drug in the end, but they just sort of messed with the actual amounts to get you there.
It's almost optics.
It's optics, yeah.
Well, and if you think about it that way, so I would love rebates to go away. I think a lot of people would. If you think about it that way, the rebate is there to incent you to get that drug, right?
Yep.
The manufacturers have created this to incent folks towards that particular drug. Again, are we in alignment? Is it because that's a better drug? Or is it, so if someone's incenting me to buy that T-shirt over that T-shirt, why? There's a reason they want me buying that T-shirt. What is it? It's not because they think it's going to look lovely on me, and so they're going to try to send me,
Yeah.
That's why we're incenting it, because we think it's going to look great on you. They're incenting it for selfish reasons. Everybody is in this to make money, so I don't mean selfish in a way of like you're bad, but if there's a rebate structure built because it's creating an incentive for something, and if that incentive doesn't align with your business objectives, which is to spend less money on healthcare, then it's a problem.
Okay.
So that's the way I see it. Now, I started this when we first met. I'm very opinionated, but I would say that there's a lot of people who would agree with me on that.
Sure.
So the building of rebates all of a sudden begs the question, like, why?
Yeah.
Why would you not just charge me the cost of the drug and let me choose which drug I want?
Well, so instead of rebate chasing, then if we say that's something that employers would want to avoid, what's a better or more optimal structure then for you if we don't chase rebates?
Is to find the lowest possible cost of the right drug for the member.
Okay.
So it also will come down to, it's not just I want that drug over this drug. There's a clinical component to this, right? You have to make sure that if you're buying a lower costing drug that's not the right drug, you're still off, right? So you want to be able to purchase the right drug at the best cost possible up front. So when we talk about the way we do things, and a lot of our competitors, it is trying to drive the member or the physician, but typically does come down to the member, to be able to access the drug that they need in a better fashion.
Okay.
So that would be if you can source it. International sourcing is a big chatter, but it's very real.
Yeah.
If I can source Humira from the States, or I can source the exact same drug from Canada for 30 to 40% less, why would I not? So I could access it here for 40% more and get a 25% rebate on it. Or I just spend less up front.
Yeah.
Why is that not just the obvious answer?
Yeah, why
Or-
isn't that the standard, right?
Yeah.
Having spent years working alongside healthcare leaders, brokers, and employers, I know how overwhelming healthcare can feel for our customers. We've all been there. Those renewal conversations that never seem to get easier. Rising pharmacy costs and medical costs, and no real transparency into where healthcare dollars are going. That's why I'm excited about Nomi Health. They're not just fixing the old system. They've rebuilt self-funded benefits from the ground up. With Nomi's network, you can offer something truly different. No copays, no deductibles, zero out-of-pocket costs when members see a provider. It's the kind of benefit that makes everyone ask, why hasn't healthcare always worked this way? Ready to bring your clients something different? Visit nomihealth.com and see how Nomi is rebuilding healthcare, one employer and one community at a time. Well, so let's talk about that. Like maybe the logistics of international sourcing, pros and cons, or things to be aware of. So when we say international sourcing, we're predominantly talking about sourcing from Canada, correct?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Okay.
We are from VerusRx, but not necessarily. So international sourcing, obviously, is you're accessing the drug from a country outside of the U.S. True international sourcing is essentially using a international broker to find that drug from any number of countries and have it brought in. It could be New Zealand, it could be the UK, it could be Canada, it could be Mexico, I mean, you name it. So I think one of the issues with that in particular is, where is it coming from? It feels a little bit loosey-goosey. And I'm not saying that it's not, but you don't know where it's coming from, so you don't necessarily know the tracking, the integrity. I mean, like from the U.S., like we have
you can't track the entire logistical chain,
you have
right?
no idea.
And so at the very least, the question just arises, even if the question is answered like, no, exact same drug, exact same manufacturer, here's the chain of events.
Right.
However, at least you don't know. So at least on the surface, there's a little skepticism. Like, am I getting the same thing?
Am I getting the same thing? So so some of that is just perception, but some of it is also reality.
And so for you guys, though, there's a little bit different model for international sourcing. So feel free to highlight how you feel there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, there is. So the other thing with international sourcing, so you do have to deal with, depending where it's coming from, customs issues.
Yeah.
So the way that we have built we shouldn't say international, we've built our Canadian sourcing is, we've built it around managing the logistics with customs. It is a brick and mortar pharmacy in Vancouver.
Okay.
So you know exactly where that drug is coming from. You know exactly who is managing the integrity of that drug, the Canadian version of the FDA. It is the exact same drug, the exact same packaging. I mean, you name it, it is exactly what it is. We have had, in the time that we've been doing this, one medication stopped at customs.
Okay.
Literally one, usually. In that instance, we were able to overnight the drug. So when we talk about what we're doing versus, we will be very cognizant saying Canadian sourcing, and we call it CanPath, but it's a brick and mortar pharmacy.
Okay.
So it's not like the cloud, but it is coming from a pharmacy, just like if you were to go down the street to Walgreens. And so the integrity is there. We don't have customs issues. We can cold chain. Not all the international can do that. I don't know who can and cannot, but we can cold chain.
Okay.
So if a drug is compromised in the delivery, ends up on someone's porch for whatever reason, we'll overnight it. So we have built it to be able to address the main concerns of international sourcing.
Yeah, there's contingencies built in case something did go wrong, even if it's such a rare occurrence.
Yep.
What's the experience like to the member, though, for international sourcing? And the reason I ask is it's good to know, okay, that sounds great in theory and the costs are lower and I can clearly determine where it's coming from and all that stuff. All those boxes are checked. But what about me, the member, who's now making a decision to either participate or say yes to allow this international sourcing? How does that work?
So with us, it works by first identifying the member who's eligible or the medication that's eligible. Part of the thing we talked about before is trying to get ahead of it. So the way that we will process this is 60 days before a plan is to go live. You have claims data. We have claims data every time we're looking at a group, unless they're fully insured, in which case it's a little bit different. But you can even sometimes get like a list of large top spend on drugs.
Yep.
You don't necessarily attach that to a member. But with claims data, we can reach out prior to and help explain to them what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we can help them, and kind of address the ethical issues, the legality issues, and also just the trust.
You're providing reassurance.
We're trying to provide reassurance because, and if you're trying to do this after the fact, it feels like they're already nervous. They're like, but I've already filled it. Why would I do this? So we do try to get ahead of it. Now, you can only do that if it's already on the plan. We try to get ahead of it with advocates, and we also have the data up front. So if you can reach out to someone and explain it, the next thing that happens is once you've spoken to them, and again, I think part of this is it's the soft sell, if you will, but it's advocacy. It is not like you can't get your drug filled here. If you fill it in the U.S., it's going to be 50% more, so you better go through Canada. Now everybody's already mad, right?
Yeah.
So it's calling them and saying, listen, you have a choice. There's typically a copay if you fill retail domestically. It's waived if you go through our Canadian pharmacy. Here's all the reasons why. Here's what we're trying to do for you. If you sign this authorization that you're agreeing to source this through our Canadian pharmacy, we will then take care of all the things behind the scenes, which is you have to get this prescription transferred to the Canadian pharmacy. But we do all that. So we do the heavy lifting. We actually, I want to say 93% success rate of those folks that we have been able to talk to about transferring their prescription to Canada.
To get them to agree.
Yeah. Now, we don't have 93% success in everybody who's eligible, because there's going to be people who just are like, I'm not going to talk to you.
Well, yeah, you told me one of the challenges if the copays are pretty nominal, if it's a difference of $10 a month,
you won't get people.
A lot of people aren't going to do it, right? So then you have to start thinking about, well, what is the incentive structure to ensure, or maybe it's a disincentive structure to not choose international pharmacy, but you don't want people not to take the drug. That's not the goal.
Never the goal.
Absolutely not the goal. It's not like, hey, we're not the prevention team.
No.
The goal is to get that drug sourced at the lowest cost option possible, but also make it as seamless for the member to say yes to it because the plan benefits. And this is where I get a little frustrated. We were talking over coffee. People don't quite understand how if the plan benefits at a way that's scalable, that will lead to lower costs on their contributions and premiums over time. And so sometimes they'll simply think selfishly, well, I don't want to do that, or that sounds too difficult, or it's $5, who cares? Well, it's $5 to you potentially, but it might be tens of thousands of dollars to the plan. So it's eventually going to come back around to you in the future in the form of possibly raised contributions or a worse plan design because the employer is trying to control those costs. And so it's like, how do you get the member to have skin in the game enough to make a better choice that benefits the whole without just thinking, why bother? And that's the frustrating part to me, is a lot of people don't think in that second step.
Yeah.
And so we just either have to design those incentives better, or every once in a while you might have to use the stick and say, well, we need you to do this, or if you don't, normal copays apply. Whatever, right? I can't tell you exactly what the answer is, but I can tell you that if you're not getting people to participate, the plan is going to perform worse over time. And at least a higher cost for everybody as a result of that.
But they don't see it that way, and I think part of where we are today, so I will say not never, but I would suspect that you will never be able to get someone to make that decision altruistically.
Yeah.
Like, if I do this, like, I've already met all my whatever, it's $5 difference, I don't care, but I'm going to do this for the benefit of my employer. We are the big bad insurance companies, no matter who we are. And they think that we are all bad, money, greedy, that why would I help you? Why would I help my employer? And you can't really blame them, given the state of our healthcare right now, right? So you do absolutely have to make it built where there's skin in the game. So we'll tell employers, if we have clients who have a $10 differential and they don't have good adoption into it, like, listen, there's a reason why. $10 is not going to do the trick.
It's not painful enough.
It's not painful enough. $50 probably, so the incentive will typically, now whenever you source through our Canadian pharmacy, there's no cost. That's just the way it's set up. So our recommendation, of course, is to optimize this. You want to make that retail copay enough to be an incentive, but we will do whatever an employer wants. So an employer may say, like, we're not quite ready to, like, throw down the hammer. We kind of want to test this out. Like, let's make it 25. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the employer's like, I don't care what you have to do.
Make
we need
it
this to happen.
$5,000.
Like, they pay in full. You can never make them do this. So
course.
you cannot make it mandatory.
Yeah, and I'm not even arguing for that.
No, which makes sense. You really shouldn't ever do that. But so you do have to structure the copays to, hurt enough, if you will, to want to at least entertain an option where it's no cost.
Yeah.
That's the first step. I would love to be able to say we could educate them on the rules behind, if you help your plan be better, sad to say, I don't know how much truth there is to that. There is and there isn't. I guess there's not truth to that in
I'm
the fully
not trying to
insured
get
world.
people to completely act altruistically. I
Right.
know that's against human nature for the most part.
Especially in healthcare.
Yeah, what I'm arguing is that we just need to have a little bit better incentive structure that it's such an obvious decision to make to do this for the benefit of themselves, no copay, no cost share
Right.
at all, and also the plan, it benefits exceedingly as well. And if those two things are the same or equalized, then therefore they'll probably make that choice 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
Okay, you sort of, rather than resisting human nature, you participated.
We're leaning into it.
We're leaning
Yeah.
into it heavily. And that's what I'm advocating for. So what type of drugs? We're typically specialty medications, right, that we're sourcing internationally, or they're
High-cost brands.
high-cost brands. Okay.
It's really not actually specialty.
It's not? Okay,
No, it's really
okay.
not. So it's high-cost brands. The specialty meds, us and many of our others, most competitors, will try to help folks source that at no cost to them through manufacturer programs.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
patient assistance. It's based on income, so it's not an automatic. So there's some hoops to jump through. We do the jumping, if you will, for our folks.
Yeah.
And again, idea is getting in front of this. So we never want someone without their medication.
Right.
Like, that's a big no-no.
Right.
Even if someone's having a problem at the pharmacy retail, like, just fill it, we'll figure it out, but do not let them leave the pharmacy without their medication. When you're talking about these specialty or brand name drugs, those are drugs that are treating pretty serious conditions.
Yep.
So you do not ever want someone not taking their drug. So we will do whatever we can to make sure that never happens. But with the specialty drugs, any patient assistance programs that are out there, we will try to help that member. We call it like almost like a mortgage process. Gather all their documents,
Yeah.
and then put it together in the best light to be able to get approval.
Okay.
We do all of that for them, which helps, again, from a trust perspective, from a knowledge perspective. I think what healthcare literacy in this country is 7%. So if I said patient assistance to my husband, he'd be like, "I do what?
Yeah.
What do I need? Why?"
Yeah.
I mean, and I do that. He doesn't listen to me, but I do this for a living, right? But most people would say that, like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we do all that for them. Some of our competitors might too, I don't know, but the idea is that you're going to help them get this drug approved at no cost to them through the manufacturers. Again, huge savings versus filling it and getting a rebate back.
Yep.
First of all, your rebate's never going to be 100%.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, like, obviously there's a cost share we take to do this, but your rebate's never going to outweigh getting this drug at no cost. And we're doing it for people who can't afford it.
Yep.
Now, again, if there's a $10 copay, they're going to say, I'm not jumping through these hoops. It's $10 to me. I don't care that it costs my employer $10,000, which is probably what it does cost
Well, what's
them.
crazy is I don't even think people, and it's not crazy because they don't have a way to know
would they?
that these drugs cost this much money. I mean, we're
would not
talking
know.
about Humira as an example. That's potentially a 6-figure drug
Yep.
annually. Like, if you say 6 figures, 6 figures is what a lot of people look as the benchmark for, I'm making a lot of money. I'm making 6
Yeah.
figures a year,
Yep.
right? Then you think a drug, a pill, an injectable is 6 figures.
Yep.
And that's scratching the surface of some of these drugs. That is an astonishing amount of money.
It's ridiculous.
But that you can equate it to, like, think of the sexiest car that you could possibly want to drive.
Yeah.
Probably somewhere around a 6-figure price tag, right?
Yep.
Okay. You're taking that in pill form and you don't even know that you're doing that. And it's just being prescribed almost mindlessly in some instances by the physician. And there's no accountability or awareness in that entire chain of events. Like that, if I could just shout at the mountaintops that this is going on, people might like go, okay, oh wow, I didn't know that.
It's
What do I
crazy.
do instead, right? They'd start
Right.
asking the question, what else could I do? Pareto Health is the largest benefits captive in the United States. With nearly 3,000 captive members, 1.3 billion of stop-loss premium in force, and almost 1 million covered lives, no other benefits captive comes close to Pareto Health's scale. But it's not just about the numbers. Pareto Health is a mission-driven organization, and that mission has 2 distinct parts. Number 1, to make self-insurance simple and more accessible for small to mid-sized employers. And number 2, to arm them with the most powerful cost management tools on the market. So if you're an employer frustrated with your healthcare outcomes, or you're a benefits consultant looking for an alternative to the status quo, it's time to consider Pareto Health. Pareto Health, where employers come to do self-insurance right, to do it easily, and to do it at scale.
And it's not necessarily, don't take Humira. I mean, so that's not the point. There are biosimilars. We've talked about that. But like, just staying away from that for a second. It's not don't take the drug. It's like, but if you could get it at a less expensive, because if we can get it in Canada for 40% less, does it not beg the question why?
Yeah, it does beg the question,
Right?
why are Americans not able to
happening
get drugs as cheap as Canada can get?
And if you go to now, I mean, when you talk about international, you could probably actually source it through Mexico for 60% less. That's a whole nother like sort of avenue we could go down. But why? Right? Like, what is wrong? What is happening in America that our drugs cost that much more? And it plays into everything that's going on with our healthcare system.
Yeah.
But again, it's not like, I'm not telling you to take something else. I'm telling you we can give you the exact same drug. It's simply coming from a pharmacy that is over the border. Why would you not do that? Which goes back to, though, if you're charging, like you're making financial incentives, I think what you have to consider is the fine line between somebody, for whatever reason, not being comfortable with sourcing, and I'm talking about a member, not being comfortable with like, well, I don't want my drug coming from Canada. Now, we could talk to them till we're blue in the face about why it's the exact same thing, all of it, and they're still not comfortable. You know, to what point do you sort of make them pay for that discomfort? Because I get it. You know what I mean? It almost all sounds fishy. Like, well, why can Canada get it for so much cheaper? If you're telling me it's the same drug, that doesn't make any sense. And actually, you're right. It doesn't make any sense, but it's the truth, and it is the same drug. But that's really hard to get your head around.
So we're trying to solve it. It is. I can't go down to the Capitol Hill and get them to sort of fix that component politically. So therefore, we're doing what we can based on the constraints that exist in the market today. So all right. So we've covered international sourcing. We've covered patient assistance programs as two of kind of the core components.
Those are probably bigger ones.
Those are the bigger ones, right? What are some other things that we're missing from this conversation that a standard, good, gold standard PBM should be doing?
Pretty standard stuff will be just, manufactured coupon card, discount cards, which, I mean, again, none of these are recreating the wheel. Is there a better way to process it to get the best engagement, to get the best trust out of the member, to make the most out of the programs? Yes, we believe so. I think what we get into past that is helping people be off the drugs. So we've talked about this, and this is something that came up in yesterday in my presentation, is to what degree are the PBMs responsible, or should they be involved in getting someone away from a drug? Now, that's not going to apply to all of them, of course.
But what's your opinion on that? If it came up yesterday in conversation, what do you think?
I'm kind of on the fence a little bit.
Okay.
I think there's a responsibility for all of us to, and again, sort of the royal we of our system and our country, to get people to be healthier in general, right? Like to make things more member-centric, to help people treat their bodies better, eat better, exercise. It's all for the good of them. And can everybody play a role? Yes. So here's where I get tripped up a little bit by the PBMs. I always will go back to aligning incentives. If a PBM is making money from somebody taking Ozempic, do they want them off Ozempic?
If it's purely a financial decision, no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to have the incentives aligned. That's one of the things. The other thing is, when I was talking with a group of consultants, is like, at which point, though, do you want your PBM involved with something where you may have brought in, you mentioned one earlier, Verda?
Verda. Yeah, there's my podcast coming out next week. Yeah.
So that's you're bringing them in to do that. So, or do you want them working together? Which I actually, if I'm thinking about it, like my happy place would be have them working together.
Yeah.
Because PBMs, that's not their specialty.
Yeah.
But
that seems a situation of diffusion of responsibility. Let's say, if desirable and possible, a member could wean off a drug because it wasn't necessary, because a habit changed in their life, or some sort of lifestyle change, whatever, lost weight, who knows. Is it the PBM's responsibility? Is it the member's responsibility? Is it the employer's responsibility? Is it the physician's responsibility? You start going, oh, it's their job. No, it's your job.
That's exactly
it's your
the
job.
problem.
And so you end up with going, well, whose job is it? I don't know. So I guess nobody's going to try. And that's where this world of employer-sponsored healthcare I think has failed to a degree is that there's a line that most employers don't want to cross into the realm of individual responsibility. That's Julie's life, and I can't intervene too much in Julie's life and Julie's choices. And my argument against that is if we're not doing anything to that effect and everybody's left to their own individual devices and people aren't making choices that are optimal for themselves health-wise, again, cost of the plan goes up, and it is the employer's responsibility financially to try to figure out how to pay for that.
It's back on them, even though
it'll loop around in like this feedback loop. And so if nobody is willing to step up and raise their hand and say, I can help solve this, then it's just going to be a bunch of finger pointing, and that's all that happens. And so this is a soapbox moment that I'll get off of, but I think it raises a really interesting question. And I'm actually glad you guys just had that dialogue in a conversation.
So I think in an ideal world, everybody would be working together towards the same goal. In an ideal world, you've got a PBM, you've got a health plan, you've got an employer, you've got a member, and the physician that are all saying, everything we are going to do for you is in the best interest of you. Unfortunately, our healthcare system has become financially driven. The doctors, the members. I mean, we talked about financially driven from a member perspective could simply be it's cheaper to eat garbage than it is, it's expensive to join a gym, all these things. An employer, if anything, the employer's selfish objective is actually probably the best of all of these, is they just want lower claims. Do they care about a member's health? Hopefully they do. But when it comes down to it, a healthier member's lower claims. The employer is aiming for that. The member there's any number of reasons that, again, we're talking about certain drugs where it is lifestyle versus just genetics. So we're talking about a GLP-1 or...
we're not discussing a hemophiliac that needs a drug to have their blood clot. Okay, well, I get that.
Right. So, we're a diabetes that is, obviously, again, not genetic.
Not type 1,
Right. So what's the member's incentive? You go back to that. You would think the member's incentive would just simply to be leading a healthier life, but that's also not the case. The PBM's incentive, almost, if you think about it again from a financial perspective, they'd rather have that person on that drug forever. So how do you align everybody with the same goal? You have to get off of financials. It's impossible.
Does this lead us to, there's the transparency conversation. I think we'll come back to GLP-1s in a moment. Talk about just state of GLP-1s at this moment in 2025. But when we think about transparency, then that obviously begs the question, how is my PBM getting paid and what are their incentives to get paid? And so in sort of that optimal world, what is your opinion on kind of the proper structure for a PBM to be paid for their role in this equation?
So, obviously, I'm going to speak to this from the VerusRx point of view, but we did it because we think it's the right thing to do, is we're paid based on driving savings in the plan.
Okay.
So now, would we get paid if we got someone off of a GLP-1? No. We get paid if we're filling something. But still, that's still the right thing to do. So if our incentives align, because if we want to get paid on what we're saving you, employer, we want to continue to save you, Mr. Employer, as much as we possibly can. If we're getting paid by prescriptions being, if we're getting a revenue stream from specialty medications that are wildly out of control from a cost perspective, we want those to keep being filled. That is not the same. We're not aligned then. So the way we get paid, and I think a lot of our competitors do, I can't speak to everybody, I don't see contracts. We would encourage folks, you want to have anybody who's working for you, your health plans included, to be paid based on how much they can save with the right treatments, the right drugs, for the right. So it's not like we're going to drive you to a biosimilar just because it's cheaper and we have no idea how that's going to affect you clinically. But if we can drive down the cost of the right drug for your members, then we're doing our job and we're going to get paid for it because that's what we're paid to do. We shouldn't be getting paid because we keep your member on on Humira getting filled domestically. You're
not calling members and say, "Are you sure you don't want to take that anymore?" We'd really love it if you kept taking that drug.
I know you can get through Canada, but can you just stay at Walgreens? Because that's going to get us more money. So I will go back to when I think about transparency, which I think is an overused word, but
I agree.
But in my mind, transparency is if you know how how a PBM gets paid, that's the best transparency you can ask for. Because then you know exactly why they're doing what they're doing and how they're doing it. If you're going to ask for anything from a transparent standpoint, that's what you need to know.
Yeah.
How are they getting paid?
How are they getting paid?
And that should be in the contract.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think we would all here agree that people should be paid for their role. Like, I am not saying this all should be socialized and nobody gets paid or we're trying to volunteer here. What I want to have happen at every step of the way is that you show how you're getting paid, and both parties agree that that's appropriate or that's fair. It's up to them in a voluntary transaction that sort of shapes capitalism, as you and I are voluntarily entering into an agreement. I believe the exchange of value is such that I'm willing to do business with you. You make your money, I get my value. It's fair transaction. We're happy with the result. And just be able to justify that amount. Right. Rather than hide it or not, we don't want to talk about that. Or don't disclose it. Or that's a proprietary agreement and I can't share that with you, right? All those things. Right. Yeah. So then if that's your answer, then you go, okay, you're hiding something from me. And now I'm skeptical of doing business with you. And so just show to the degree that you can how you're getting paid and let everybody that's in that transaction judge if it's fair or not. Yeah. And then I guess the next step to that would be able to report it. Yes. Right. So you can say how you're getting paid, but if you don't show it, then and so I guess you go back to full disclosure on reporting, full disclosure on how you're getting paid. You need to know how to read that contract because that is where a lot of this stuff can be, I guess, kind of hidden, if you will. So I will always go back to that. That's the only way the incentive's aligned is if I do a good job, I get paid for it. If I do a good job, you save money. That's it. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but that's it. It should be that simple. Yeah. So let's move on to GLP-1s, and I've covered it a number of times, but it's inescapable in the world that we exist in today. And so we're shooting this at the end of February 2025. We were talking about compounding to a degree. We talked about whether or not there's a lack of supply or anything anymore, and it seems like that's sort of like we've gotten past that. It seems like, right? So like, what is this current state of the union and like the right way to handle GLP-1s for an employer? So what I said to you earlier, I'll reiterate, it being covered on a plan or not for weight loss is almost irrelevant at this point. Okay, yeah, why do you say that? Well, not that they're not expensive, because they are. So if you're covering it for weight loss, you obviously are opening yourself up for the financial liability for however many more people. Probably a pretty large percentage of your population. Yes. So I should say, in the immediate, let's call it the next 2 to 5 years, the financials of allowing it on the plan for weight loss are going to be more prevalent. But when I think about it, I'm talking about the cost of being on a GLP-1 5 years and beyond. And because what we don't know is what's going to do to somebody's body. Now, again, if you're on a GLP-1 for weight loss, because the risk of your obesity and your comorbidities is greater than any potential risk that, by the way, we still don't know about, then I'm all for it. Yep. But if you're on them for weight loss and you're really not at risk from a health perspective, and it's more, vanity's not the right word, because there are people on it, let's call it for 5 pounds, but 30 and 40 pounds is not overweight. But it also is probably not quite life-threatening unless you're, 5 foot. It would be life-threatening for me. If I gained 40 pounds, it'd be pretty noticeable. I had when I was pregnant, and I was like, I said I was like a square. Yeah. No, but it's so, like, what's the real risk to you from a comorbidity standpoint versus the unknown risk of, and that's what scares me the most right now, is because whether or not you cover it on your plan, if taking a GLP-1, and even for diabetics, if it somehow destroys some part of your body, think about the healthcare costs that are coming. Yeah. And we don't know. You raise that point over coffee, and it's something I haven't necessarily considered, is that because we don't know the downstream effect, opening up the possibility that people are doing it for weight loss alone, and there'll be a certain percentage of adoption if you start to do that. Oh, more than a large percentage of adoption. Yeah. So 5 years from now, could my plan actually see some really detrimental effects financially and then obviously health-wise for these people, because we're just not certain what the long-term effects are going to be? That's the biggest concern. There is a risk to that, right? And so I think what we were also discussing over coffee is, if you don't cover them on your plan, people are still going to get access to them that want them. They just may have to pay for it, but there are so many ways to get access to GLP-1s these days that if you want it, you're going to be able to get it.
Give my phone, I'll order it right now.
Yeah, you're like, I'll order it on camera right now.
Daily.
Yeah.
Like 10 ads a day. I get text messages.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing articles where they're even indicating that they should be used in children in certain circumstances. And you're just going like, they're finding every possible indication that they can to suggest to use a GLP-1.
It's so
And it feels like there's a, there was a fen ordeal.
So funny, I was thinking about that. Yeah.
And I was a little young when that happened, but I do remember just a gigantic lawsuit as a result of that. And everybody was on fen for a while because they wanted to lose weight. And oh, by the way, oh my God, it did some crazy stuff to people. I worry if we're having another wave of that type.
It's so funny because I literally had that same thought when I was like sort of thinking through this. It's like, do you remember fen? Mm-hmm. Everybody was on it. And then all of a sudden, I can't remember, it was a heart attack or whatever. It caused,
some pretty serious health issues. And I do recall there was a pretty substantial lawsuit as a result of that.
Yep.
And so could we see something like that happen in GLP-1s? Possibly, probably. I just don't know
If
yet.
I had to guess, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor, but when you think about how much it changes your body, like the things that it does, I just can't imagine it's not going to have a negative effect. I hope I'm wrong. But I don't know, it just seems like the way that it works, and it works really well, that I just feel like messing with your body to that extent. Like something's got to give here. Now, again, I might be wrong, but my concern is, like, I literally could order it tomorrow. Anybody, all of my friends, and I have friends that are on it, and I don't think that it's not bad that they're on it. Like, I get it because I do get the frustration, and I get the feeling of like we are a world of immediate gratification as well. Yeah. But I also, I get the feeling like 30 pounds is a lot of weight and I want to lose it and I'm stuck and it's hard. And it's not always as easy as we'll just diet or eat less and exercise more. But the concern is like what happens in 3, 4, 5 years? And this is why I say health plans, this is like the least of their concerns about covering it for weight loss or not. It is a concern. If you cover it for weight loss today, yes, you will see your costs on those drugs skyrocket without question.
Okay.
But that could be nothing compared to, the liver transplant your employee needs 3 years from now. Now, I'm speculating, guys. I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. But like that, what's coming? We don't know.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's focus on it, and then we'll move towards the end of kind of what's coming. Is there anything though of the Verus equation that we haven't touched on yet that I want to give you a chance to highlight? I mean, we kind of covered some of the core things that PBM should do, but are there other things that folks are going, I'm liking what I'm hearing. At least I like the value system that Julie espouses. But like, what do I need to know about Verus? Like, if I want to do business with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have built our entire model around somewhat of a certain market size. We're in, I call it the mid-market. Anybody self-funded up to, 5,000, maybe 10,000. The idea is you're looking for immediate savings versus, and so this goes back to like chasing rebates. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to drive down your spend, it's not, I want to drive down my spend by getting more money back at the end of the year. It's like, how do I fix this quickly? Mm-hmm. So that's really how we built the model. The other way that we built it is with the idea that the more you can keep in-house, which by the way is everything with us is in-house, you are managing a claim, a member, a medication from the time it was sent via eScript to the time it's been filled.
Okay.
Meaning before we go live, we talked about, we can obviously see those prescriptions and get in front of them by reaching out to members, educating members. We go to open enrollment meetings. I mean, we do all the things to establish what I think is one of the key factors of member engagement, which is establishing trust. Because people inherently do not trust any of us. They don't trust insurance. They don't trust PBMs. They don't trust captives. They don't trust anybody. You're all telling me I can't take drug or get the procedure. That's everybody's mindset. So if you can immediately try to get through that barrier, the more success you're going to have in getting a member to understand that you're trying to help them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you can get ahead of it before day one, because after day one, a member's already panicked that they can't get their drug. So like, let's take care of this before we go live. So now we have also guaranteed you that you will have the drug that you need to be taking in hand at a lower cost the first day that you are on this plan. After that, there's emergent therapies. We will get in front of it immediately because we have our member services and our advocates who are constantly scrubbing data files, and we are the ones reaching out to the member. And so when you have it in-house, it's the difference with that is being a bolt-on, what we call a bolt-on.
Yeah. Yep.
A third party, an outsource, which a lot of folks have. And again, if they're doing that, good for you, because you're still trying to attack the problem. We just believe that if we have management of this process from start to finish, we're going to have a better job working with the member, being an advocate for the member. If someone calls into our member services and we know that it has to do with a drug that is eligible for one of our programs, it will immediately go to an advocate to talk to this member.
Okay.
So we're just eliminating this sort of language barrier, and when I say language, I'm talking the language of healthcare.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're eliminating the language barrier, we're eliminating a distrust issue as much as possible, and we're doing all the heavy lifting. So all the things that we can do in-house allow us to do it quicker. So the quicker the turnaround, the more successful you're going to be with a member. You're also going to ease their concerns about, what if I can't get my drug on time? I need to be taking this drug. Absolutely, you cannot not be on your drug. And the other thing I would say is, if we can get ahead of it, what I talked about with you a little bit is it's very common to hear what you call a grace fill. What does that mean? It means we're going to let you fill it at the pharmacy once. We used to see it all the time with mail order.
Okay.
We'll let you fill it at the pharmacy once, but after that, you have to go through mail order. So, and once that happens, you're like, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
And then if there's no financial incentives, then you're automatically losing them. But if you got to it beforehand, instead of having that grace fill, you get them started on the right path in the very beginning. I use the word path, and I don't mean it. It's our program is called PATH, but I wasn't saying it that way. But if you get them on the right path before any of this happens, that's just the only way they know. So now it's just done. They don't have to feel like, what do I have to do? What do I have to change? What if I can't get my prescription in time? So the more you can get ahead of it with a member, the more success you're going to have. Because once you have them do a grace fill, now you're asking them to change everything that they've already known. And that gives them a little bit more distrust and a little bit more
it makes
doubt.
total sense. I mean, it's not too dissimilar in the world of reference-based pricing, where the old way was sort of pay and defend.
Exactly.
Now it's no, let's go try to pre-contract with a facility that we don't necessarily have one today, and see if we can get out in front of it to negotiate with them before it becomes no, you owe me this money, and I'm going to balance bill your member, and then I'll see you in court.
And they're like, oh my God, what did I just get myself into?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's actually great. That's a great analogy, because I think reference-based pricing is very scary to people. But when you have a vendor who is saying, no, we got this, by the time you go, we will sort of have this settled.
Exactly.
That's peace of mind.
Yep.
So that's really Throw me a Coke. That is the way we look at it. And we are successful. We have great adoption rates. And so when I am talking to folks about our program, I beg folks to get off of the spreadsheet game, because spreadsheets can only show you a discount and a rebate. They absolutely cannot give you the value of what we do and how we do it. And it's the battle I face, because up until recently, it's spreadsheet galore.
Yeah, and you can show a cheap price on a spreadsheet, and you can make it look like you won. And it's funny, in your world that we kind of joke, it's every PBM that you go to can show you a claim savings report. They'll look at arrears, and they'll process those claims and show you a savings. It's can I do that every single year until I get it down to zero? Because if everybody can show savings, okay. But it is because you're just solely focused on what's demonstratable on a spreadsheet, and you can kind of get stuff to look however you want to win the business.
You really can.
The reality might be completely different. So, and in the interest of time, I want to get us sort of towards the end. You said you've been in this world for 29 years or so.
29 years,
you dated yourself. I didn't date you.
I'm old, people.
So, in current state of affairs today, kind of what are you anticipating happening in healthcare in the next couple of years? What are some of the big things that you think are going to change?
What I do see, based on sort of this new crew that I have gotten myself a part of, is there is a huge push towards more transparency, more alignment of incentives, RPB, and again, it's just about getting to the real cost, or the fair cost of what needs to be done. So there's two sides. One is, I think, in general, we might start to see the health of our our country improve. Might. That one would hope. I think that's going to be a bigger thing to tackle. I do think we're starting to see, with the lawsuits and the bad PR and all, everything we're seeing, everybody is starting to question what's going on behind the scenes. And if everybody continues to question, it's going to be, I say it's like turning the Titanic, but eventually more and more people are going to open their eyes to like that 50% discount sounded so great. You're like, discount off of what number? So I'm hopeful that we do see a shift towards uncovering the appropriate cost for the necessary services or drugs or, whatever it is. I think that comes down to transparency, my least favorite word, but again, the transparency and how somebody earns their money from a healthcare perspective. Being able to see the data and then being able to see, what are the real costs? I talk about RPB, if a hospital says it's $100,000, but ABC, big carrier, says, but we'll give you a 50% discount, so it's $50,000. And you're like, well, that's great. But if an RPB carrier can go in and get it at $30,000, so what is the real cost? Because if they're going to accept 30, why would they take 50? Well, because they can't, right?
Because they can.
You have to figure that out. And so I feel like the shift is becoming, let's get to the real cost, the right cost. And then you do have a lot of other vendors coming in, point solutions coming in. I think that's where we're starting to tackle maybe a little bit more of the health of the country.
Yeah.
The intervention there.
Yep.
I think if both sides come in, we will see, hopefully, if at the very least, a reduction of this incredible
Well, I mean, think
trend.
about it. If you could just prevent people that are pre-diabetic from becoming diabetic, then you don't have to worry about the cost of insulin, because the cost of insulin is unnecessary in that equation, right? So, there are things that we can do on both ends of the spectrum, right, in order to reduce costs. And I agree with both of those. Find out what the true cost of things is and what's the fair price for it. Absolutely should do that. Make people healthier.
Absolutely
also,
should do that.
so that we don't have to worry about the true cost of something because they didn't need it in the
true
first
cost
place.
of surgery doesn't matter if you don't need the surgery.
If you don't need surgery, right? All right, so Julie, I appreciate you again, and I'm so glad we had a chance to do this.
Same, thanks.
Last question I'll ask is if there's any sort of closing thoughts or something you want to leave people thinking about.
About me or Verus?
You or Verus or life or Orange Theory, whatever you want to talk about.
I love me some Orange Theory. I think this is, I'm going to come back to, if we're all aiming towards the same goal. I could talk about Verus and what I believe in till I'm blue in the face, and I do. I probably the first role I've ever been this passionate about. But if those folks who are going towards the same goal, I would say, pay attention.
Okay.
In consultants out there that are saying, we want to do this, that, and the other. I get that they're bombarded with vendor reps. I'm sure you go through this too. But try to pay attention, because if there are people out there talking about wanting the same end game as you do, give us a chance. And I say that knowing I've been a consultant. I've had people calling me, and you have a tendency to be like, another salesperson, and I get that too. But on the flip side, if more of these things are coming out, more people are trying to do the right thing, maybe it's time to open your eyes and go, okay, I try to give people a chance. And so I'm on a little bit of a soapbox now, but it's if we really are all aiming towards the same thing, don't dismiss everybody, And if you don't like what I have to say at the end of the day, I won't call you again, So I don't know. I just think it's really important what we're all doing.
Yep. And then for me, just like you're doing, is just trying to raise the level of awareness that these things exist in the first place. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Julie, thanks again. This was really a pleasure. I appreciate you so much.
Can I sing now?
You can sing. Go. All right. Bye, guys.